Welcome back, everyone, to jikGeek. Welcome to our flagship edition of jikGeek in the week. And yeah, this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So thanks for joining us. If you're with us in the chat today, loads to talk about. Hot D, Lord of the Rings, which I didn't think I was going to cover on the channel, but we're going to discuss anyway. We're going to go over the Game of Thrones prequels. We're going to talk about Final Fantasy 16. I'm not going to touch on Final Fantasy 7 this week, but we will do in another edition. We're going to touch on Superman returning, Henry Cavill exiting from The Witcher. That's an interesting one. And we're going to touch on some Marvel stuff. I know Black Panther Wakanda Forever did release in cinemas this week. I haven't seen it yet. It is on the to-do list, but I'll probably watch it in an alternative fashion. What I do want to cover, though, is about Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. So lots of exciting stuff to talk about this week. There's been loads happening. Yeah, let's get into it. Loads of articles to go through. And if you join us in the chat, brilliant. It would be great to have you with us. If not, hopefully you enjoy the stream after the live showing goes out. So feel free to drop us a like, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content, and stay tuned for more. So where are we? Okay, so I wanted to start with just going over the kind of prequel war that's been going on between House of the Dragon versus Lord of the Rings, and I think we'll just we'll take a look at some of the IMDb scores. We'll dip into why that's probably happened. We'll take a look at She-Hulk as well, because it's something I haven't touched on in the channel, but I know it's been quite popular across other channels, so definitely something we can cover off. Now, as you're probably all aware, those that are subscribed to the channel anyway, I'm a massive House of the Dragon fan, massive Game of Thrones fan, and we've done reviews of every episode in Season 1, so we've been doing reviews, mostly live streams, but these are been uploaded to videos on the channel, and for me it's been an absolute groundbreaking success, and I've been blown away. It's been absolutely fantastic, everything, and we covered this off in our Season 1 review, so go and check that out if you want. It's only about 5-6 minutes long, so it's a nice and condensed video, whereas the live streams are quite a kind of a dump of my thoughts on the episode, where we think we're going to go next. Some of the differences in the books are spoiled in some of the reviews as well. So yeah, it's, for me, absolute groundbreaking success. Now, let's just take a look at this. So 8.5 on the IMDb score. Let's just deep dive into the episode list. I mean, in all fairness and on reflection, there were some absolute bangers of episodes, and probably my favourite and everyone else's favourite out there has got to be episode 8, Lord of the Tides. Now, no doubtedly 9.4, but if we go back and we look at the Heirs of the Dragon 8.7, compared to some of the rest of the episodes, that was an absolute quality episode, and I'd probably put it top 5, top 3 maybe in my list of episodes from Season 1. Now, since I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan, it's probably coming across quite biased that I am also inevitably a massive House of the Dragon fan. I went into this show very apprehensive. I was heartbroken, shall we say, with Game of Thrones Season 7 and 8. More so Game of Thrones Season 8. It was a disaster, an absolute failure. There's been loads of great reviews online on YouTube if you want to go and check them out. But yeah, it's blown me away how good it's been. The quality's there. They've stuck to the books. They've made some interesting choices across most of the episodes as well. Some dodgy choices here and there, like episode, I think it was where was it now? The end of the Green Council. That wasn't so good, and I know that slightly differs from the books. And when we transitioned from the younger actresses to the older actresses playing Alicent and Rhaenyra, that was a that was a tough pill to swallow for me, because Millie Alcock and Emily Carey did such a good job of playing Rhaenyra and Alicent respectively. So, thoroughly enjoyed their performances, and We Like the Way was an absolute banger of an episode. So, in all, I guess my personal opinion is House of the Dragon has been an absolute joy to watch. 8.5 on IMDb, I think that's quite low, I would say. I think that's coming in quite low compared to Lord of the Rings, where undoubtedly 6.9 is probably, in my opinion, a bit too high. Now look, I'm a massive fan of the films. I absolutely love The Two Towers. It's my favourite out of the three. The Battle of Helm's Deep is arguably one of the greatest pieces of film ever made, and it just blew me away when I watched it before. Having watched, I think me and the missus watched, we watched The Fellowship a couple of months back, and again it was good. It was really good. Now, I clocked out of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, after 2 episodes. I was going to do some episode reviews for the channel, but considering the quality, I was very, very underwhelmed, and it goes to show in the IMDb ratings. Now, look, this isn't kind of like the gold standard. This isn't to everyone's taste on IMDb, but it's probably a more accurate reflection of who won the prequel war, because they both came out at the same time, this and House of the Dragon, and in my eyes, it was a good thing because it set them both against each other. Now, they both come from massive fantasy, sci-fi fantasy kind of realms, worlds, depicted by amazing authors. Equally, though, you can tell the quality of the House of the Dragon compared to Lord of the Rings, and it's blown it out of the water. I mean, Lord of the Rings budget was what? I think it was somewhere probably close to, at the death, 100 million, maybe even more, maybe. But they brought on very inexperienced showrunners. Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne, I think, are the names. And I don't think they've got much going for them in terms of credentials. I'm no movie critic. I'm no TV critic. But you can tell that they've struggled here. And comparing this to House of the Dragon, it's chalk and cheese in my eyes. So, look, I just wanted to touch on the fact that Lord of the Rings hasn't come out on top despite the massive budget, despite coming off the back of, and arguably this was 20 years ago, but despite coming off the back of probably the bigger fandom. The Lord of the Rings fandom is absolutely ginormous, and in all fairness, the Game of Thrones franchise is relatively new. This has only been going for probably 8, 9, 10 years now, the Game of Thrones one. So coming off the back of the success of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, arguably the best trilogy ever made, I always toss that up with the Batman Christopher Nolan trilogy. So it's disappointing, really, because the Rings of Power could have blown us away. It could have been fantastic, and we'll touch on shortly the reason I'm bringing this up, because I did want to just cover off the fact that I personally think that House of the Dragon has won the prequel war. I think it will continue to win the prequel war going into season 2. I've got some ideas about what we can do in terms of our our season 2 content at House of the Dragon. So stay tuned on the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see that. But it's disappointing, the Rings of Power. Now look, it had some okay parts, but I checked out after episode 2. The quality wasn't there for me. The story wasn't there for me. I wasn't hooked, and it was all centered around Galadriel. Now, knowing what I know, and I know quite little, Galadriel isn't the main antagonist, the main protagonist. Sorry, Sauron, or yeah, Sauron, I guess, is the main antagonist, but you know, we all know that from the main trilogy films. So going up against House of the Dragon, I expected this to be better quality. Now, if we compare the both though to something like She-Hulk, and again, something that really didn't tickle my fancy, really didn't interest me, really didn't and really didn't stick the landing at all. In fact, it really didn't stick any episode. And I didn't even attempt to watch one of these episodes. Usually I clock in for the first one. I have watched all of the other Disney Plus shows up until I think it was up until Miss Marvel. That didn't interest me either, and I'm glad I didn't check into that one. I'm glad I didn't check into She-Hulk, even though this arguably had one of my favourite Marvel characters in Daredevil in it. I was massively underwhelmed from what I've read, listened to, watched all over YouTube. So again, whilst this isn't a prequel, it just goes to show that the lack of quality that this has had, and a score of 5.1 here is laughable, really. Now, even compared to what should we say are some of the lesser quality but better, compared to this anyway, Disney Plus shows, we've had the things like Loki, which introduces to like another aspect of time and the quantum realm potentially in season 2. We had what else did we have? Bloody hell, forgettable. We had the Winter Soldier, and those are the two that I probably thought were the better out of the lot of them. Equally though, they were still very, very poor. And again, I'm doubting whether I'm going to pick those up as part of the channel going forward. Now, what I would say is though, is it's this and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Let's see if we can bring that up actually, because we can get some early indication about what people are saying about Black Panther. So it's coming in at a 7.4, which is good, you know. For a Marvel film, it's pretty much there as the bog standard, because even things like Civil War and Captain America 2, not the best scores on IMDb. So 7.4 is decent in its opening weekend. But again, I've heard things that the quality's lacking. There's some good scenes at the start and good scenes at the end. Not something I'm probably going to be reviewing on the channel, probably because I'm too late to it. But it might be something, you know, Phase 5 is something that I want to pick up as part of the jikGeek channel going forward. And Ant-Man is something we're going to be covering later on. So what all of this brings me to, and is our first article. Hopefully you can all see that. We've gone straight to an article from Bounding Into Comics, and this is one of my favourite sources of quite, you know, it's not a very biased source. So we've gone straight to Bounding Into the Comics, and yeah, I mean, it's a massive, really, for me, it's a massive rumour that Amazon are not happy with Lord of the Rings of Power Season 1 at all. Creatively bankrupt first season, and these are the words of Bounding Into Comics. So a new rumour claims that Prime Video will be completely rebooting The Lord of the Rings of Power following the creatively bankrupt first season, which chose to throw out Tolkien and replace it with intersectional feminism. I mean, there's an argument to be said that it did. There's an argument to be said that it stripped away a lot of the good stuff that Tolkien developed himself. I mean, he's a genius. The bloke is, you know, from my neck of the woods in the UK. An absolute genius. The new rumour comes from YouTuber Gary Beekler of Nerdrotic. I mean, all hail Gary Beekler of Nerdrotic. Followed him for years. Fantastic. Great stuff if you want to check out Gary. Yeah, just search for Nerdrotic. So Gary Beekler from Nerdrotic, who says, "We've heard the rumours from my man Chris Gore Again, shout out to Chris Gore from, he's got another great channel on YouTube. That the showrunners might end up being Fall Guys and we might have to wait till after reward season to see if this actually happens. Well, in all fairness, this is no surprise to me that they're going to potentially be axing season 1 and either rebooting it or going against some of the principles that they did with season 1. Some feminism in there, some wokeness, going against Tolkien, and I think they'll be sticking more to the books, more to what the source material is, because bear in mind they've got very, very limited source material to work from with the Rings of Power. So let's see what happens after, I think it's the People's Choice Awards he's making reference to there. So he then adds, I also heard that they're going to go for a full-on reboot with this series and try to pretend that the last 2 months didn't happen. Roll out the publicity, maybe roll out some more influences and try and get the people to binge the Rings of Power. Well, good luck on that because, I checked out after 2 episodes. The quality wasn't there for me. The storyline wasn't there for me. Some of the things I was most looking forward to, understanding who they'd, bring in as Sauron. I mean, that was pretty obvious from episode 1 and 2. And the acting was absolutely desperate. Now, I've watched some of the reviews that others have done, like The Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic themselves. I mean, I checked out The Perfect Failure video a while back, and they're all really honest accounts of how bad the Rings of Power was. Now, compare that to the House of the Dragon. I mean, even my reviews were, praising it to high heaven, but to see the likes of The Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, even Mauler, have a positive, outcome for the House of the Dragon season 1 is just, it goes to show, because they absolutely slated Game of Thrones season 8. So what have we got? So Gary went on to state, and to add to that, what if I told you that the Rings of Power did not start this way? It was never meant to be woke intersectional disaster. It did not have Gandalf, which it didn't, mind you. The source material they're working with didn't have Gandalf. It didn't have repurposed hobbits, which it didn't. And it didn't have Halbrand as Sauron. And it didn't have Warrior Galadriel. Again, it's just, it's just kind of reiterating what I've just said. Galadriel was the main focus. She was massively changed from the books, from the source material. Now, comparing that to the Lord of the Rings films, Galadriel was depicted as like the perfect character, how she could have been depicted. This has taken on a whole new meaning, and they've really spinned her into this kind of be-all, end-all hero, which she isn't from the material. What if I told you the show was usurped by people like Lindsay Webber and Jennifer Solke, which I think are the showrunners? Now, you compare people like these to the guys that have done House of the Dragon. I think it's is it Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik. Now, they've had George on board. Obviously, these haven't. The Rings of Power haven't got the they haven't got George R. R. Martin. Sorry, not George R. R. Martin. They haven't got Tolkien to draw from. They have got his works though, and they've bought what they can in terms of the appendices of his works. But they could have had scholars on board. They decided to drop the scholars. They decided to drop the main people that knew all about Tolkien's world, and they brought in kind of fake scholars. They brought in fake superfans, and it goes to show, because they've kind of spunked the money down the toilet, really, and it is heading, in my eyes, I don't think they will reboot. I think they will just go with a much different approach to season 2, a lot more positivity with sticking to the books, a lot more positivity towards the book fans, and comparing this to House of the Dragon, it is absolutely evident that the book fans have been the sole, well, the book fans and the general audience have been the sole focus here, because they've brought in things like the prophecy stuff, the Prince That Was Promised, touching on the Azor Ahai stuff, touching on the White Walkers. All of this stuff really is the stuff that us as the book readers love to see. We want to see more of that in my eyes, because that's the stuff that George has yet to write in The Winds of Winter. So any drop of The Winds of Winter, or any drop of the ending of the Game of Thrones book series, Song of Ice and Fire, I'm going to be latching onto that. And that it's one of the reasons why I think House of the Dragon was so incredibly good. Now, where are we? Bolstering the rumour that he heard Prime Video will reboot the series moving forward. He speculated the show will see massive viewer fall in the second season. I mean, it's no doubt there, because season 1 was jumped off a cliff, and I think it was Az from Heel vs Babyface that did a dive into like the episode and viewer count, and it just rock bottom. Gary theorised it didn't need to be this way. I think we'd all love to be rooting for a good Lord of the Rings show, but that is not what this is. This is an Amazon product and has very little chance of succeeding with the same people after 2 years. Quite right, Gary, I think. I'm guessing you're going to lose half your audience in the first episode of season 2, and it's just going to go down there. Well, he speculated, I'm guessing you're going to end up a lot like Westworld, which just so happens to be another bad reboot product, and it's just got cancelled, except the big difference is Westworld had a good first season. Absolutely right. And again, I checked out after 2 episodes, so for those that have watched, end to end every single episode of season 1, it's I'm surprised anyone has. Yeah, I'm really surprised anyone managed to sit through to the end episode, because it got even worse apparently. But like I said, I don't think this is going to be a reboot. I think this is going to be something on the lines of a pivot into season 2. They're going to stick more to the source material. They're going to stick more to what the book fans want to see, which is centered around a lot like what House of the Dragon does. Multiple main characters, a Game of Thrones approach. Remember, in Game of Thrones, we had Daenerys and going off on the east. We had Jon in the north, and we had Tyrion in the King's Landing. I mean, I know he dotted about in probably the first season or 2. And that's what allowed us to get round the map. This one, it was very Galadriel central, and I think that's one of the main reasons it's been a downfall. So, where are we? You might have had a chance if you just had a normal bad show and didn't attack the fans, but you didn't, and you're now going to suffer the consequences of the perfect failure, because that is what it is. The one thing Amazon did right was everything wrong. He concluded, well, I mean, it just goes to show what I think Amazon are bricking themselves, and I've seen various articles from various sources that once depicted Lord of the Rings of Power as an absolute triumph, and now saying it's a disaster. What's his name? Jeff Bezos is not happy, because the main reason he bought the Lord of the Rings, or at least what he could buy, was to have his own Game of Thrones, and he wanted that massive global overnight success that was Game of Thrones. But compared to how they approached Game of Thrones, Dave, Dan and George Martin, at least for the first 4 or 5 seasons with HBO, compared to how Amazon has approached this with what looks like dog shit writers from Bad Reboot and dog shit producers from Bad Reboot, which is... what's his name now? The guy who did Star Trek and Star Wars. He... let's just have a look. What's his name now? Star Wars... movies. Well, J.J. Abrams, that's him. So, it just goes to show that, it just goes to show that J.J. Abrams and his team, because bear in mind this team on the Rings of Power are part of his clan, really. So Gary's claim of rebooting the series moving forward echoes what Film Threat founder and industry insider Chris Gore said during an appearance on Midnight's Edge in the morning. Gore stated, I heard from someone who had a connection at Amazon that if you want to know that effectively they're going to be rebooting or retooling, and that JD Payne and Patrick McKay, which are kind of like the equivalent to Dan and Dave at Game of Thrones, are more likely, and they're not going to be publicly fired, but their role will be reduced. So I've actually watched that on Midnight's Edge in the morning. He basically goes on to say that JD Payne and Patrick McKay are going to sit in the back, they're going to take a back seat. They're going to be in the side. They're going to be sidelined, and equally that means that they're going to bring in more quality writers, more quality showrunners to kind of be shadowing them and to be the unfaced, unnamed people that are going to take this forward. So potentially just remaining in the writer's room, he added, like I've just said. But my understanding is that they're looking for more experienced showrunners. Now, if we did an IMDb search on JD Payne and Patrick McKay, we will get to the point with, we'll get to that point. They're very inexperienced. They've had something like 2-3 brand names to their CV. One of which was an absolute failure in Star Trek, one of the new TV shows. So he then claimed they're well aware of the problems. They're sort of like publicity, what they say, and they're actually doing behind the scenes. And what they're doing behind the scenes is they're freaking out. And this was more of a failure than it could have been anticipated. I think the quality of the show is the number one thing he opened. The fact that it's like, why am I still watching this? This is sleep-inducing. The second is the total rejection from the fans, and I can't believe that there has to be a few people that remain still like that. I mean, I can't argue with that. And thirdly, the direct competition from House of the Dragon. He concluded the strategically announcing that they would have come out at the same time and even like precede and post-seed, so to speak. So House of the Dragon started earlier and House of the Dragon is ending later. And House of the Dragon is absolutely 100% better than The Lord of the Rings. And I've only watched 2 episodes of The Lord of the Rings, and I'm going to make that statement right there. Following Gore's claims, a source contacted Bounding Into Comics and informed us that Prime Video's plans on keeping Payne and McKay this season because they want Emmy Awards. Well, they ain't going to get none. Well, they probably might because it's a bloody fix, them Emmys anyway. So the source added, sidelining them would spike any consideration in all categories. Yeah, I doubt. I mean, if they win it, it's just, it's a fix because this is an absolute disaster. Payne and McKay have made no sign that they are getting sidelined. Just ahead of the release of season finale, Payne revealed that they plan to focus on Sauron for season 2. Well, thank God, because he's the constant, really, and he's the... I know they've messed him up in season 1, but more on Sauron as Sauron. Get some bloody armour on him, get him sword fighting. We want to see all that cool stuff in season 2, not bloody loads of talking and nonsense. He told The Hollywood Reporter, season 1 opens with who is Galadriel, where did she come from, blah blah blah. We're doing the same thing with Sauron in season 2. We'll fill in all the missing pieces. You see, I think that's a bad strategy. What House of the Dragon have absolutely nailed on the head is that they haven't focused on one character. Yeah, it's mainly focused on Alicent, Rhaenyra, Viserys, and a bit of Daemon here and there, but look how well they've fleshed out, players like Corlys Velaryon, Otto Hightower, even the Maesters. They've done an incredible job. And look, even bringing the kids in, they've done that incredibly as well. So just focusing on one character, for me, doesn't open the world. It doesn't make this big, grand world of storytelling. House of the Dragon have done that incredible. They've developed multiple different characters, and that's how Lord of the Rings should be doing this. Picture us back to the films. We had Frodo and Sam's journey. We had Gandalf's journey. We had Merry and Pippin's journey, and then we had the trio. We had Legolas. What's his name? Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn's journey. You can dot about the place, just focusing on Sauron, just focusing on Galadriel. It's a one trick, one treat. You're putting all your eggs in one basket there. I know they've touched on in the house in Lord of the Rings with all the characters and tried to develop them, but their story arcs have been very, very weak from what I've heard. So McKay added, Sauron can now just be Sauron, like Tony Soprano or Walter White. You dare compare, this type of Sauron to Tony Soprano or Walter White? There's no comparison. Or I think we've had more character development in probably the half an hour we saw of Sauron in the Lord of the Rings films than we have in 8 episodes of Sauron here. So Gary goes on to say he's evil but complexly evil. We felt like we did that in one season. He'd overshadowed anything else. So the first season is like Batman Begins. Don't even dare compare this to the Dark Knight trilogy. The Dark Knight is the second movie with Sauron manoeuvring out in the open. We're really excited. Season 2 as a canonical story. There may well be viewers who are like, this is the story we are hoping to get in Season 1. Season 2, we're just giving it to them. Well, it's too bloody late because you're going to have lost half of your audience in Season 1 because it was so terrible. Right, Payne revealed on a show we have a lot of time to get to know the characters, to go deeper into the mythology. So just get a call. On a show, we have a lot of time to get to know the characters, to go deeper into mythology and lore. Some scenes we shot didn't even make it into the final scene, probably because they were so bloody bad. When you put them up against the larger stakes of the world, they didn't quite punch their weight. I don't think many of them did, mate. Even with the smaller character scenes, you need to have a sense of how it connects to the stakes and contribute to the whole. I disagree with that. They didn't do a good enough job. They put too much focus on Galadriel, too much focus on one character in Season 1, and it looks like they'll be doing the same in Season 2. Does that mean Galadriel's going to take a back seat? Probably not, though, which is she needs to be rewritten in my eyes. So McKay also detailed, in Middle-earth, everything at the end of the day is about the fate of Middle-earth. He wants to tie back to the battle of good versus evil and the temptation of power. It's a high bar for anything to clearly deserve a spot in the story. Starting this journey 5 years ago, JD and I had the idea of what the bar was. We haven't set it very high, mate. And compared to House of the Dragon, I mean, this is an absolute disaster and a failure. In all, I'm probably going to stop there. That's probably the end of the article, actually, anyway. Having gone through the process, we have more specifically of what really feels like Middle-earth and what doesn't. Well, this didn't feel like Middle-earth, partly because you didn't really stick to any of the material that you've had from the works of Tolkien and Middle-earth. So, like I said, I don't think this is going to be a reboot. I think this is just going to be a complete and utter strategic pivot for the brand going into Season 2. We'll see. Now, Despite HBO seeing House of the Dragon as an absolute critical success, and in my eyes it really was, what we do have is a bunch of prequels in the Game of Thrones, what we're calling it, the Game of Thrones universe, the GOTEU, extended universe. What we have, though, is a potential few cancellations of multiple Game of Thrones prequels. Now, I don't think any House of the Dragon, any Game of Thrones prequel bar House of the Dragon, is any of them out there at the moment are probably going to be worth watching, if I'm honest. Which ones have we got? Let's just see. Game of Thrones prequels in development. Which ones have we got? So we've got House of the Dragon, obviously. That's going to be renewed for Season 2. That's been a critical success. We've got the Sea Snake. Now, according to Wiki of Thrones, this is one of them that is being cancelled. And in my eyes, that's a good thing. Because really, who needs a Call of Velaryon prequel to a prequel, or a story that we're probably not really that bothered about? So I have no doubt as to why this is being cancelled. Now, we've also got 10,000 Ships. Now, this was about Nymeria. We heard about Nymeria in one of the earlier episodes of House of the Dragon, when they were talking about it in the book, young Alicent and young Rhaenyra. They spoke about Princess Nymeria, who is part of House Martell, and she was basically the commander of these 10,000 ships, and they went in places, they went all over the world. Is it going to be a very interesting prequel? Doesn't really sound it. Now, the big one I did want to talk about is the Jon Snow prequel. But let's just get on to the cancellations first. So Game of Thrones fans were delighted to know that around 10 live action and animated spin-offs were in early stages of production. I'm going to stop there because I wanted to pinpoint the reason they're doing this. I watched a video from Dick Van Doomcock about 2 months ago now, and he basically said HBO are flooding the market, or this could be Warner Brothers, this could be Discovery, Warner Brothers, absolutely flooding the market with Game of Thrones prequel ideas to see what shit sticks, basically, because they want to understand what people want to see next. And we had House of the Dragon. Well, actually, let's cast our minds back to what we had prior to House of the Dragon, which was Blood Moon, which was the White Walkers spin-off, which probably came at the wrong time. Now, I heard the script was very bad. I heard it was very woke. But equally, I heard also, and it's probably no doubt, that this was a complete flop, and it didn't even get, it got cancelled because coming off the back of season 8 of Game of Thrones and the disaster with the White Walkers and that terrible ending during the long night, it just completely destroyed the show for me. It destroyed anything to do with the White Walkers, and it destroyed any hopes for Blood Moon, that prequel, of getting a chance. If it was done in the right way, it probably would be good, but equally, everything leads to Game of Thrones Season 8. I have hopes for House of the Dragon because it has a start and it has an end, but you take things that have an impact later on down the line, like Blood Moon, like the White Walkers, no chance. So, no doubt that got canned. House of the Dragon, great choice in my eyes. Great story, loads of characters, goes all over the Westerosi map. So we're going to see things like Winterfell in Season 2. No doubt that they've done a spectacular job there. But, coming back to Dick Van Doomcock's video, we've had things like the Jon Snow prequel, which we'll get on to. We've had things like the Nymeria one. We've had things like Dunk and Egg, which, again, if it's a bit dodgy, that one, because Game of Thrones wasn't complete, the books, and neither is the Dunk and Egg stories. We've had 3. They're all fantastic. You should go and check them out on Audible or Google Play. I think they're always cheap on there. Absolutely fantastic stories. I read them in like 2 days, 3 days. They're not very big. They're probably like 75 pages each. But again, even that story isn't complete. So it's a risk. It's in development, Dunk and Egg, and it's not one of the ones that's been cancelled. But again, it's a very big risk because it's a story that hasn't been completed by George R.R. Martin. I would rather even get his finger out and get the Winds of Winter done and then move straight on to A Dream of Spring. I know George R.R. Martin's come out and said he's going to be doing The Winds of Winter, then he's going to be looking at Fire and Blood Part 2, and then I think he's going to be focusing on maybe a Dunk and Egg story here and there, as well as The Dream of Spring. One can only hope anyway. So the latest update from their HBO production partner, Startling Inc., reveals otherwise. As of now, only 2 of their 4 live-action projects remain. It's bloody no wonder. Right. Startling Inc. is a library-driven development and production company founded by Gerardis and Ralph Vicinanza. Sorry if I butchered that name. They're also founded the literary management and production company to which George R. R. Martin has signed. Their website currently only displays Dunk and Egg. Oh, we've got them here. The website only currently displays Dunk and Egg from the spin-off lineup. Previously, that list also included 9 Voyages of the Sea Snake. So that was the Corlys Velaryon show, prequel, whatever that would be, and Nymeria and the 10,000 Ships. Fans eagerly awaited the first after Steve Toussaint's brilliant portrayal of the Sea Snake, which he did, mind you. He's done a really good job. Steve Toussaint, he's done a fantastic job as Corlys. The latter had already been teased in the first Game of Thrones spin-off to go on air, House of the Dragon. So, like I said, that we were teased with 10,000 ships. But now it might be possible that these shows have found a home with another production partner. So what are they? Harrenhal, A Song of Ice and Fire stage play. Well, I'm glad Harrenhal, the story of Harrenhal, is getting some sort of attention because it's a brilliant, absolute brilliant story from the A Song of Ice and Fire series and kind of that backstory lore. We get everything from Robert's Rebellion. We get everything from what's the Laughing Tree, when Rhaegar and Lyanna meet. Might even go into like the Tower of Joy, that sort of thing as well. And then we've got Dunk and Egg. The risk that one is. It might be possible these shows have found a home with another production partner, but this seems somewhat unlikely since Startling Inc. has been with HBO throughout Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Meanwhile, a Harrenhal-based stage play and an animated show named Ice Dragon still remain on their website. I don't think Ice Dragon is a part of the Game of Thrones franchise, but that is a book by George R. R. Martin. So, right, let's just touch on the Jon Snow spin-off. While House of the Dragon is heavily on mind of Game of Thrones fans, there is still a Jon Snow spin-off in the pipeline that intrigues viewers. Well, I've got to be honest, it doesn't really whet my appetite. Jon Snow's story was very anticlimactic. I was expecting a lot more from him, especially in the Long Night episode, and then as the story went on, it just got worse for him, and he was almost sidelined. What I would say is this is another idea that HBO or Warner Brothers are throwing against the wall here. The only thing that I want to see is a season 7 and 8 and further on reboot of Game of Thrones. That is the only thing for me that could save this franchise, because Warner Brothers have come out and said they are struggling to understand why people don't want to, they're not interacting with the Game of Thrones like hashtags, they're not interacting with the Game of Thrones products. It's a dying brand. House of the Dragon has done a lot for it. Don't think it's quite turned around the absolute failure, though, that was season 8 of Game of Thrones. And a Jon Snow sequel is not going to do that either. So, through Game of Thrones, Jon is as near to the central character as the season has and is the focal point of some of the series' best and most iconic episodes and moments. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. We had the ending of season 5. That was good. We had Battle of the Bastards in season 6. We had the Jon Snow reveals in season 7, but it just went to absolute tits up in season 8. It is a big weekend for Game of Thrones fans whenever a new House of the Dragon episode airs, but some are holding off on a return to Westeros. For those who haven't heard the news yet, House of the Dragon was recently renewed for a second season, which is fantastic news. What will be the premise of the Jon Snow spin-off? Well, there's been rumours mentioned that it's to do with bringing back Daenerys as well, using Kinvara, and that's where Drogon takes her to. We might be introduced to book characters like Val, bring back the wildlings, maybe even go far north to the land of always winter, maybe bring back the others, maybe touch on the children of the forest, because they probably still exist. The werewood trees still exist. They probably all still exist in the Isle of Faces, so we could go as far as that. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's got potential because I don't want it to happen, and I don't think it's a good idea to do a spin-off. It could easily end up turning into Game of Thrones season 9, which is probably, if we don't get a reboot, is probably the best course of action in my eyes. Now, whose idea was the Jon Snow spin-off? It was bloody Kit Harington's, because he's been suffering with depression since it finished. Poor lad. The initial report stated that Kit Harington was on board to mark his return as Jon Snow and had already consented to the series. Now, Kit Harington actually went and approached George Martin with this idea, and George likes it. Of course, George is going to like it, though, because he's going to get money from it, so no wonder he's going to like it. I think nail the Winds of Winter, nail the Dream of Spring, get that bloody reboot sorted for Game of Thrones, then we can start thinking about season whatever with just Jon Snow and his story after the Game of Thrones show finishes. I'm on the fence as to whether Jon Snow actually survives the book, though. For those hoping that HBO is designing an epic follow-up to Game of Thrones, they are in for a bit of a disappointment. There is only so much the Jon Snow spin-off can accomplish in a couple of seasons, but obviously we're still thrilled as the prospect of seeing more of Jon Snow, even if it actually is just a mini-series. Suppose the series does well, maybe that will push HBO to renew it for a longer run. See, again though, it's going to be based on one character, and comparing that to House of the Dragon, where House of the Dragon is like focusing on many different characters, it's just going to feel like the Rings of Power in my eyes. I don't think House of the Dragon is setting up a Game of Thrones spin-off about Jon Snow. Oh, here we go. The Prince of the prophecy about the prince that was an eternal winter from the north would endanger the world of men. Well, we all know how this, story arc finishes. It finishes with Arya killing the Night King, and it finishes with Jon Snow screaming at a dragon and bending the knee to Bran the King and going north. So I don't know how they're going to tie him into being the Prince of Promised, unless they bring back the White Walkers or unless they bring back the others and the Children of the Forest. So the Prince that was promised, although the gender neutral word for prince in Valerian donates, it could have also been in regard to princess. Excuse me. The A Song of Ice and Fire novels cited a prophesied someone. They cited a prophesied prince that was promised. There might be a reincarnation of the warrior Azor Ahai as they knew him as the saviour of the world. Rhaenyra recites this line from the prophecy. It reads, "From my blood comes the prince that was promised, and his will be the Song of Ice and Fire." This stipulates of the prophecy drove many to think it was about Jon excuse me, during Game of Thrones. This was considering he turned out to be the offspring of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. They were the personification of ice and fire. Yes, they were. I agree with that. What I don't think, though, is what Rhaenyra is talking about is Jon Snow. Because until season 7 and 8 is not canon, Jon Snow is not the prince that was promised. But the identity of the prince that was promised wasn't really confirmed by the completion of Game of Thrones. Well, it was, and it wasn't Jon Snow, it was Arya Stark. This is why some think the Jon Snow spin-off may eventually answer the question. Will the spin-off change the ending of Game of Thrones? So, some viewers anticipate the Jon Snow spin-off to make some subtle alterations and changes to the end of Game of Thrones. The only way you're going to be doing that, as I said, is if you bring back the White Walkers, you make the Children of the Forest and the others the main antagonist, and you bring back Daenerys. All that basically just shits on Game of Thrones, and basically you might as well just call it Game of Thrones Season 9. Yeah, it goes on to say, who will we see? Fans think Daenerys might be coming back. Here's why. Additionally, Robin Arryn... Yara Greyjoy, Benjen Stark, Daenerys Targaryen, Robin Arryn, Daario Naharis just might return to Westeros to seek on revenge. Davos Seaworth. We've still got Tyrion Lannister. I think it's a failure waiting to happen in my eyes. Yeah. What other prequels have we got? Rumoured Flea Bottom series. Well, I don't think anyone wants to see a Flea Bottom series. I think that's just another waste of money waiting to happen. What would be interesting, though, is something completely new. And the Golden Empire of Yi Ti, mind you, and the Golden Empire is what the working title is for another animated series. This sounds quite cool because Yi Ti is somewhere that isn't broadly explored in any of the books, more so probably in the World of Ice and Fire book. But yeah, isn't explored in really any of the A Song of Ice and Fire novels. But it seems like things are moving very fast. The news leaked several months ago that one of the animated shows would be set in Yi Ti. That's true. Our working title is The Golden Empire, and we have a great young writer on that too. And I think the art and animation is just going to be beautiful. I would tell you more if I could. Now, I think this is a good idea. Not really big on animation, if I'm honest, but, you know, something different about Yi Ti, some new characters, because they've got their whole idea about Azor Ahai. There's all sorts of different names that they call Azor Ahai in Yi Ti and Ashai, and loads of other places there. They've got the five forts as well, so they've got all of the lore as well about the Black Stone and like a precursor to the prince that was promised as well. They might have dragons. Depends which part they take though, which time they take for Yi Ti. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Now, overall, what I would say about the prequels is, and I agree with Dick Van Doomcock here, it is arguably a way for people to, for Warner Brothers to judge the audience, judge the popularity of these ideas. I've got a feeling that the Jon Snow spin-off will go ahead, but it'll be badged as a Jon Snow spin-off. It'll probably take on the idea though of a Game of Thrones season 9. We'll see though. Right, what else have we got to talk about? So we've touched on the prequel wars. We've touched on the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power reboot. We've touched on the prequels, Game of Thrones. Right, for all of my Final Fantasy followers, we've got the Final Fantasy X No Sphere Grid playthrough still going on the channel. We're on part 5. We've got part 6 to come. Tune in if you want to see more. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss an upload of that playthrough. But what I wanted to talk about today, though, was a quick article I'd noticed on Google about Final Fantasy 16. And the premise, it basically touches on Final Fantasy 16's combat system. Let's cast our mind back to FF10 and let's cast our mind back to FF7 Remake. FF10, arguably, in my eyes, the greatest Final Fantasy game produced to date, even with Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Credit, though, where credit is due to Final Fantasy 7 Remake is they did an incredible job of merging action combat with turn-based combat, and I hoped that that's the direction that they would go in. I hoped that that was going to be the gold standard of action combat with a kind of turn-based element to it going forward, because FF7 Remake was brilliant in my eyes. It's, again, still not as good as Final Fantasy X because of some of the changes, and it's not a complete game, and they've got the whole kind of, is it really a remake? Is it a reboot? Is it another timeline? I don't know I don't know the answers to any of those questions. What I do know, though, is that they should have taken that blueprint and applied it to FF16. From this article, and we'll go into it shortly, it doesn't look like they've done that, especially from seeing the trailers as well. Now, Naoki Yoshida says the priority is to make something the development team likes. They should probably do something that the audience likes, not the development team. Final Fantasy producer Naoki Yoshida, again, sorry if I've butchered that name, says he's aware that the game won't appeal to everyone. In an interview with Japanese site Comic Days, Yoshida explains that he realises the game switch to a more action-based combat system may not sit well with players more used to the series' traditional turn-based combat. We want the world, especially the younger generation, to play the game, Yoshida said, claiming that many players in their late teens and late 20s have heard of the Final Fantasy series but never played it. Also, the mainstream games nowadays are intuitive games where you press a button and the character shoots a gun or wields a sword, and the traditional RPG style of turn-based combat fighting is no longer familiar to them. It isn't, and you're right, it needs to adopt to a more modern audience. But look at the success of Final Fantasy VII Remake. That merged action combat that we've seen in these trailers with the likes of the Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy X days of turn-based combat. It is the perfect, it's like a song of turn-based and action combat together. Going down this route, though, will arguably, in my eyes, makes FF16 not as popular as they are anticipating. And I think if that is the case, we will see a shift to a more FF7 remake style for Final Fantasy 17 and beyond. So it is also a fact that people are becoming less familiar with the old-fashioned style of RPGs where you fight by selecting turn commands. That's why the battles in FF16 are very action-based. We want to make people all over the world think that Final Fantasy is a great game. Yeah, that's a good point, but FF7 Remake just did such a good job of merging those styles. Of course, I don't think we'll be able to satisfy everyone's demands, so I've told everyone on the team that the first thing we need to do is to make something we think is fun and make sure it reaches the people who like it. Yoshida previously defended the new battle system last month in an interview with Famitsu magazine. This is not an argument of what is good or bad, but there is a difference based on the player's preferences and age, he said. Furthermore, there is a big difference between a command system and a turn-based system, and these are often conflated, but they're two different concepts. Again, they are two different concepts, but just sticking with one is going to turn what should be an absolute groundbreaking new game into probably a flop like Strangers of Paradise was, which was one of the Final Fantasy prequel games. That had a similar action-based style like this. It just looks like every other action-based RPG. It just looks like Devil May Cry. And the fact that they've got... I don't know if it is this Naoki Yoshida that they've got on board who previously did Devil May Cry 5. It might be him, it might be someone else. What I would say is, though, is that person is the sole reason that the vision of this game is heavily tied in with action-based combat. Because looking from the trailers, it doesn't look like a Final Fantasy game. It looks like Devil May Cry, and it might as well be badged as Devil May Cry 6. Now, finally, he added, RPGs originated with tabletop RPGs, and I think that gaming RPGs were invented by replacing the tabletop discussions with commands in video games. As I said, I believe I know the fun of command systems RPGs, and I want to continue developing them, but I thought about the expected sales of Final Fantasy 16 and the impact that we have to deliver. You've got to deliver a good game, pal, because if you don't, people are going to start running from the franchise. FF7 did a good enough job for new players to come in, to capture the old generation, to capture the new generation, and to merge both of those audiences together. It's done an absolute perfect job, I think, of doing that, and is the best case scenario of what we're going to get, at least from me being a turn-based combat fan. It's going to be the best case scenario going forward. But we'll see. I mean, look, if they stick with... From what I've seen so far, visually, the game looks stunning. It looks absolutely incredible. Combat-wise, though, it looks like it's going to be bad. Bad in the sense that it's going to be boring. Button mashing, a lot like Final Fantasy 15, a lot like Devil May Cry. Final Fantasy 16 needs to be different. It needs to remind me, a voice in the Final Fantasy community. It needs to remind me of what Final Fantasy is all about. It's not about button mashing. It's not about attack. It's about using the different options. It's about strategy. It's about using summons. It's about the world. It's about the characters. It's about merging all of these different pieces together. And it means about merging these pieces together in and out of battle, in and out of cutscenes, in and out of FMVs. So I'm not excited for Final Fantasy 16. If I've got some time, and depending on how far along we are with the Final Fantasy 10 playthrough, I'll be playing Final Fantasy 16, or I'll give it a go and probably do a quick fire review on the channel. The thing is, though, I'm not excited for the game, and it's a shame, because if they probably adopted a more Final Fantasy 7 remake approach, I would be. My God, that would be good. That would be great. A new story, bringing back all these different elements of Final Fantasy worlds from years gone by, with the Final Fantasy remake, 7 remake approach to battling. It'd just be the perfect game. It'd be an absolute outstanding game. But we'll see. So that was just a quick one on Final Fantasy 16. I know we're clocking out over an hour. I did want to touch on, though, my main man, Henry Cavill, coming back as Superman. We're going to get onto Ant-Man and the Wasp shortly after as well. We've got a quick bonus piece of content that I just want to touch on before we finish. So we'll probably be hitting on the hour and a half mark by the time we finish on our flagship version of flagship edition episode of JGITW in the week. So I hope you're all enjoying it. Smash the like button if you are. Subscribe to the channel if you never want to miss an upload, or you never want to miss an edition of JGITW in the week. Without that though, Henry Cavill returning as Superman. I am absolutely buzzing. Now, the Snyder Cut was perfect in my eyes. It reiterated what a Justice League film should be. It had Cyborg as the basically the heart and soul of that film. We had plenty to flesh out the Flash's character. We had great scenes with the Batman. We had great scenes with Wonder Woman. And we got to see Henry Cavill in that goddamn amazing black suit. Now, the fact that Henry Cavill has been confirmed I am back as Superman is music to my ears. There is not an actor out there that could play Superman as good as Henry Cavill, and I'm a massive fan of him being Superman. I thought he was brilliant in Man of Steel. I've watched that multiple times. I thought he was good in Batman v Superman. I know that's got its flaws, but I thought he was good in that, especially at the end. And I don't see the Justice League as canon. Justice League Snyder Cut is canon in my eyes. So the Man of Steel is back, baby, and I am buzzing. The reason, though, he's come back, and I just wanted to touch on this as part of our Superman segment, is the reason he's come back is because of two things. One, because DC, Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers Discovery have brought him back because he is the poster boy for DC going forward. Two, the money, obviously. But three, I think he's dropped from The Witcher as well. I think he's dropped from The Witcher because they didn't adhere to the source material. Season 2 was a joke, and I think Season 3's probably going to be as bad. So I didn't think he enjoyed his time on The Witcher. And as soon as he got the call from Warner Brothers Discovery to come back as Superman, to be the poster child for DC going forward, along with Ben Affleck as Batman, he jumped at this opportunity. So I'm absolutely buzzing for the Man of Steel, Henry Cavill, to be returning. What I would like to see him in is this kind of idea of the Man of Tomorrow, Man of Steel 2 film. That'd be I'll be stoked for that. That'd be incredible. That'd be a blockbuster hit in my eyes. Get Brainiac involved. Maybe bring back Lex Luthor. We can cameo with people like Aquaman, like Batman, like Cyborg, like Martian Manhunter. We can develop those characters, especially Martian Manhunter. That would be really good. We can tease Black Adam as well. So I'm glad he's back. I'm really stoked for what they do in terms of his next steps. I think he's more the film type next steps for Henry Cavill for Superman. Batman, arguably though, has more of a weekly series type TV show potential. So we'll see what they do. I'm absolutely over the moon that he's back as the Man of Steel though. So just to quickly go through this article then, Henry Cavill posted on social media on Monday that he's back as Superman following his cameo appearance in the post-credit scene of Black Adam, which opened Friday to 140 million worldwide. Well, that's, Black Adam, it was all right. Watched it. It was all right. Forgettable, we should say. I wanted to wait until the weekend was over before posting this, but I wanted to give you all a chance to watch Black Adam. Cavill said in a video posted on his Instagram feed, but now that plenty of you have, I wanted to make it official. I am back as Superman. Yes! So Cavill said his Black Adam cameo and his image of him in the Superman suit, which arguably looked a lot like Christopher Reeves, included in his Instagram video, are just a very small taste of things to come. Get in. Can't believe he's back. The 39-year-old actor gave no further detail, but he did thank the fans for their enthusiastic response to his return as the last son of Krypton. A very small taste of what's to come, my friends. The dawn of hope renewed. Thank you for your patience. It will be rewarded. I hope to God it is, because I love him as Superman, and I think he's playing a great job. He played a great job of Geralt in The Witcher, but I think he plays a superb version of Superman. So hopefully they do some good stuff with him. Hopefully the Man of Tomorrow sequel film will be good. Hopefully they can bring all of his villains to the table, and then we can build this massive world and this massive extended universe and develop the Justice League films. Justice League 2 and 3 is what I want to see with Darkseid, and ultimately we get that massive showdown with him, with Darkseid. I can't wait. I really hope they do that. What I wanted to finish on, folks, is some Marvel news, and I was thinking about touching on Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but I think we'll finish on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now, Black Panther Wakanda Forever finishes Marvel Phase 4. Arguably the worst, I mean, some of the worst TV I've ever watched in Phase 4, but it is the worst out of all 4 phases going forward. No vision, dodgy plot lines, poor character development. I mean, the list goes on. It hasn't been very favourable. I haven't been very favourable to it. What I hope, though, is Phase 5 starts with a bang in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, because from the trailer, it doesn't look that bad. We get a great shot of Kang, the Conqueror, which was introduced in Loki Season 1. I think he's probably going to be a decent Kang. I think what's his name? We'll probably get it down in the Jonathan something or other. Anyway, what I did want to, and I guess then, spoilers ahead for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, because we may touch on some plot leaks that have surfaced all over the internet. If you want to avoid them, avoid Reddit, avoid Googling this, and thanks for tuning in, because we might be touching on a few spoilers. I don't mind spoiling this because, it could be good. It looks decent. It looks very female-centred, and it looks like Ant-Man's going to take a backseat, much like he did in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But we'll see. Hopefully, we get lots of Kang. Hopefully, we get lots of Ant-Man, because I think Paul Rudd's a great Ant-Man. He brings that comical side, but he also brings that action side as well to the role. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania will open Marvel's Phase 5 of MCU next February, but we might already know what happens to this highly anticipated sequel. After an Ant-Man and the Wasp plot leak dropped in late July, we have another extensive leak detailing the entire story. So again, folks, spoilers if you don't want to know what happens with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I already know what happens. Sounds pretty decent. That's as far as I'm going to go, though. If you're tuning out now, thanks for joining in. Thanks for your likes, your comments, your subscribes. If you're sticking with me though with the spoilers, let's crack on. Right, so this, as always, with such leaks, there is nowhere to tell whether these are genuine. They sound genuine, and multiple sources have confirmed these leaks of being similar, very similar. The 2 leaks aren't a perfect match. Well, I've heard otherwise, that there are a lot of similar leaks out there. Right then, so the new Quantumania plot leak. The new Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania plot leak comes from the mods of the Marvel Studios spoilers subreddit. Again, like I said, stay off Reddit if you don't want to be spoiled. They say the leak has been verified, which should inspire confidence that we're looking at the real deal. Like the previous plot leak, this one indicates that both Ant-Man and Wasp families will be sucked into the quantum realm in the movie. Well, we've seen that from the trailer already. I think that dropped on YouTube a couple of weeks ago. And thanks to Cassie's invention, something we see in the trailer, yeah, like I said. So we see all, we're returning to all the familiar faces we've seen in previous editions of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Oh, big shout out to James Hewitt. Thanks for joining, pal. Hope you're enjoying the content. Hope you're enjoying our first edition of jikGeek in the week. Thanks for the like as well, man. Appreciate that. yeah, where were we? So, yeah, all of the faces returning from the previous film. I should really find a way to try and manage the chat a bit better. What we have, though, is anyone joining us in the chat, by the way. Thanks for joining, and yeah, hope you're enjoying the content as well. So, the Quantumania plot leaks also mentions the villains. MODOK, which is a mechanised organism designed only for killing, or the big Corey Stoll head, whatever that means. What we've seen, though, from the trailer is Kang the Conqueror. Jonathan Majors. I didn't think he played a very good part in Loki. What I do think, though, is he's looking like he's going to be playing a very good part in this film. More importantly, we'll get to understand the backstory of Kang variant that will appear in Ant-Man 3. Put simply, Kang has a history with Janet trying to escape the quantum realm, and he's killed the Avengers before. Well, again, we saw that in the trailer. Now he wants Scott to help him get out from the plot leak. Janet and Kang were both trapped in the quantum realm together in the past. He has a ship that can travel the multiverse. Well, what this looks like is his chair. This looks like the chair. This looks like yeah. So it could have something to do with it. The chair or the ship. Now, Janet and he were fixing it. He wanted to help her fix time so that he could get back her time with Hope. Janet discovered he was evil via a neural connection he has with his ship. After confronting him and confirming his nature, she destroyed the equipment that made his ship work and trapped both deeper in the quantum realm. Kang has been the conqueror ever since. Kang tells Scott he has beaten the Avengers several times. So we've seen that from one of the extended trailers. I think that was from the Disney Plus trailer, or the some sort of special Disney trailer. There was an extended version of that particular scene that we've got right there. So he wants Scott to help him get out of the quantum realm, and he says they should work together. Kang claims to be the only one who can stop what's coming. When Scott asks what that is, Kang simply says me. So, spoiler for the comics, Kang is all about time. He's all about himself across multiple different universes, multiple different timelines, and eventually it will probably be Kang versus Kang, and Kang defeating Kang. So we'll see what that is in store. Right, so it turns out that this might be Kang the Conqueror, who remains feared in Loki. So yeah, going back to what I've just said, this Kang doesn't seem to be the same Kang as the nice guy who got killed in Loki season 1. This seems to be like a badass actual version of Kang, and I really hope we get to see him, 1 in his suit, 2 in his mask, 3 kicking ass, because that's the Kang we want to see. We want to see him on that level of Thanos, because Thanos, in my eyes, is going to be tough to beat. So Kang tells Janet that she gave him a lot of time to plot his revenge by leaving him stranded in the quantum realm. This is kind of what I've heard before as well. Kang reveals he's built an empire, which is what it looks like in this image at the bottom, which I think from some of the other details I've heard is something called Chronopolis. So Scott will reportedly get into the quantum nexus, where he'll meet variants of himself from the multiverse, including Langs, who aren't superheroes. He will work with those Ant-Man variants against MODOK. So what is all this leading to? This seems to be all leading to the final battle, and will resemble the battle in Aquaman to a certain degree. Well, that sounds promising. We can see Giant Cassie fighting MODOK. She tries to talk him into switching sides. Giant Scott and Giant Cassie run to each other for a hug. He jokes about it feeling like hugging Godzilla. Kang has a standoff with Scott, Hope and Cassie. Well, that's what we want to see. We want to see Kang getting in on the action and being a badass. The Kang fatally injures MODOK. The family goes to MODOK's side as he dies. He rubs his tiny hand on Scott's cheek. Oh, MODOK's the little monster dude. There's an emotional moment where MODOK says Cassie was right about him and that he at least died an Avenger. Scott says that he did a good job and agrees. Kang survives the fight and stops Scott just as they all going back to their universe. Janet, Hank, Cassie and Hope escape. Kang beats the out of Scott. Hope comes back for him and they almost manage to trap Kang in the quantum realm, but he escapes and traps Scott and Hope inside. Well, this is all going to lead up to probably Cassie going back in to save them. And this sounds like that's how the movie ends. So this sounds like this is how Kang is going to escape. And what I've also heard is Kang escapes to the 616. So in the comic books, the 616 is like the main timeline. And this is the first place that Kang's going to go. There's apparently how the movie ends. Scott and Hope will be stranded while Cassie probably be trying to get them back. But then she'll find a mysterious detail that will make her gasp just before the screen cuts to black. Oh, I don't even know what that is. That could be anything, though. That could be the fact that Kang's escaped. The fact that she'd maybe discovered some sort of, quantum time thing. So it just goes into more detail about the leak. To be fair, it sounds like a promising film. It sounds, it sounds better than Ant-Man 1 and Ant-Man and the Wasp. So hopefully it is, because those were kind of subpar B tier, C tier level Marvel films. What I'm glad they're doing is focusing on Kang, focusing on the quantum realm, focusing on Kang and the time stuff. Because we haven't really heard much of Kang in Phase 4. It's been about developing different bits and pieces here and there, different characters here and there. This is going back to some of the original some of the kind of Phase 3 Avengers, and I hope we see more of Kang, because he's a really good villain in the comic books, and from what I've seen on the trailer, he looks like a badass, and some of the pictures of him look like a badass. And to be fair, the quantum realm in this film looks incredible. If we weren't going to get copyright striked, I would probably do a review of the... I'd do a review of the... I'd do a watch-along of the trailer. Anyway, folks, I think we're about an hour and a half. I think that's all we're going to do for this time. Hope you've enjoyed the first episode of jikGeek in the week. This is going to try and be a regular weekly thing now. We're going to maybe try and experiment with different days. Maybe a Friday, maybe a Saturday. That's probably when I'll likely get to do this. We thought we'd start out though on a Sunday. Hope you've enjoyed the stream. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts about what we've covered. So we've covered everything from Hot D, Lord of the Rings in this one, the Jon Snow prequel, all the other Game of Thrones prequels, Rings of Power reboot potentially. We've covered a bit of Final Fantasy as well, some DC and Superman and Henry Cavill, and we finished on a bit of Marvel. All of what jikGeek is all about. So hope you've enjoyed the content. I've loved it as usual. JG signing out. Thanks for joining. Take care. See you on the next one.